Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when and where you're watching. I am PlainGuy, and this is the PlainGuy Show. On this episode of the PlainGuy Show, we got the opportunity to sit down with author Aidan Coles. Aidan wrote the book Life in the Fast Lane: True Confessions of a Tow Truck Driver. As you guys know, I have been back into towing. This was a very personal sit down for me. Aidan and I had a great time. We talked towing, we talked mental health, and a little bit of everything else, guys. It was one of my favorite sit downs. I know I say it every time. Everyone just keeps getting better and better and better. So, if you haven't, don't forget to hit that subscribe below. Our community continues to grow, and I cannot thank you guys enough for what you have done. Without further ado, though, let's get started with Mr. Aidan Coles. Let's go.
You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down. You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down. You're the best.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, author of Life in the Fast Lane, True Stories, True Confessions of a Tow Truck Driver, Mr. Aidan Coles. Aidan, how are you doing today, my man? How are you?
I'm hot, I'm sweaty, and I'm tired.
Sounds like a perfect day on the West Coast.
Yeah, no.
So Aidan, we're doing things a little differently today, guys. Normally you guys have seen us, we sit down with streamers. Today, being back myself into towing, I got the opportunity to sit down with Aidan. We are going to talk about his book. We are going to talk about towing. But before we do any of that, Aidan, there's one question we ask all of our guests at the beginning of every show, and are you
Yes,
a cat?
to being on the internet.
That wasn't it. We probably should have got to that in pre. Are you a cat person or a dog person, and why do you hate cats?
I'm a dog person, and if you think about the personality traits of a cat and a dog, dogs are loyal, they're obedient, they're just unconditional love, and cats are just assholes.
That is pretty fair. That is pretty fair. That seems to be the general consensus coming among most of my guests, is that cats are assholes, dogs are phenomenal.
Yeah.
So we've got the book here, guys, and I will hold it up. You will see we got it down also in the bottom of the screen. Links on where you can find it. You can find it at www.promontorypress.com. I think I pronounced it right. You can find this book at Coles, Chapters, Indigo. You can find it on Amazon. I've got my copy. This is my third copy. Keep losing them. Aidan loves me for it. I just keep buying them. And guys, you can find yours as well. If you are in the towing industry, it is worth the read. You will relate immensely with the stories that are told in it. They're all true stories. They're all stories we can relate to. I think they're all, in one way or another, we've had similar situations. They're never the same. As we know, in towing, nothing is ever the same twice. Mm-hmm. If you're not in the towing industry, guys, just to be able to understand kind of what we go through on a daily basis, the ups and the downs that we deal with, the different types of armor that we wear, as you go over in the book. Tell me, Aidan, what was your favorite part about writing this book?
I would have to say that it was so cathartic. It was actually getting shit out of my head and actually being able to share it. Right. Like, I mean, the genesis for it was my brother, who is not at all like me. He's actually clean cut and respectable. He's an ex-military businessman. He's actually become a priest.
Oh, quite the career.
Just last year was ordained as a priest. So,
nice.
We're a little different, but he always used to have like a big Christmas party every year at his house or his condo. And he would invite all his friends, which are ex-military, and like business people, suit and tie. And then there was me, and I would roll in you know, like maybe I was wearing a clean shirt, but quite often the tow truck was parked outside.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I would just be shooting the shit with people and just telling them like about my day or about,
Mhm.
you know, the funny shit that had happened to me last week. And, you know, that went on for, you know, like 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
Mhm.
And one year I just wasn't feeling it. And I'm like, you know, Ben, I'm not coming this year. Like, I feel really out of place. Like I'm not, you know, like, and Ben was like, no, you have to come. Every single one of my friends wants to know if you're coming because they love your stories.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, what? It's like, no, like everybody loves to hear your stories because it's a different world than what they're used to.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. Like, and nobody, really understood it. So
Mhm.
I was kind of floating around and, you know, like that sort of tickled around in my brain for a long time. And as I was going through shit and you know, my life was happening. And then, you know, I kind of got out of towing and I was long hauling.
Mhm.
And I actually ran into my brother at the ferries one day.
Nice.
Just like totally
Complete
fluke.
coincidence. Yeah.
We were both on the same boat going over to the mainland. And so, you know, we just kind of wandered around, had coffee and, you know, shot the shit. And I said, you know, I know you're doing a publishing company. Like I was kind of thinking about maybe writing a book about my experiences. And like the words weren't even out of my mouth. And he was like, do it. I need it by the end of the month. And I'm like,
Oh.
what? And he's like, no, that's gonna be huge. And so I was kind of like, okay. So, you know, I had a laptop with me
Yeah.
and literally 90% of the book was just written while I was sitting at truck stops,
Jeez.
bored out of my mind,
Yeah.
with nothing but, you know, memories in my
Mhm.
head tickling around. And, you know, I mean, anybody who's lived this life knows that when you've got nothing to occupy your brain except your memories, that's not a good thing.
No, no,
So,
that is true.
so yeah, getting through that and then like getting it out. Like literally it was kind of a blah, it all came out onto into paper. And you know, I didn't really think about what I was going to write. Like, you know, normally if you do a book, then it's, you know, you've got a plot, you've got characters,
Mhm.
you know, even if you're doing a nonfiction,
Yeah.
you know who the players are and you know the basic storyline.
Yeah.
Well, for this, I had no clue. Like this was literally just whatever was on my mind that day, that night, and I would just kind of let it out. And then I would refine it a little bit. And I left it very, very raw.
It
Um,
was.
you know, I mean, it was edited after the fact, but I left it as raw as possible because that was actually what was coming out of me.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I would have to say easily that was the best part about it. Going back to the original question, was to actually get it out and being able to share that, because you know, like that's not really who I am. I'm not a sharer. You know, my mother says I've known you 50 plus years and I still have no idea what goes on in your head.
Well, my mother says the same thing. So now I'm starting to wonder if it's the industry that does that to us. I guess not. She would have known you well before the industry and it was still there, right?
No, I think it's a personality type
Right.
that gets into the industry.
Mhm.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
you have to be slightly insane to start. But you have to, you know, I mean, let's face it, if you think about almost everyone that you know in the industry, they're type A personalities.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Right?
100%.
Like,
Type Bs don't last.
you know, they don't put up with shit and they just get her done.
Mhm.
That's
I've
the
always said
personality type.
we've got type A's and type Bs, and we
Yeah.
need, there is some type Bs and we need both.
Yes, definitely.
I don't think I could work in a yard with 6 of me, and I don't think anyone would want to work with 6 of me, and I wouldn't want to work with them.
No.
There's the guys that, you know, are criticized at times because I call them seat fillers at times, but they're needed. They were guys that'll go in, they check in, they do their calls, they check out. They won't, you know, they're not looking to be Superman. They're not looking to do anything crazy. They just want to hop in the truck, knock off their day, and be done with the day. And I mean, you need those guys. Those guys complement the crazy ones like us that want to go out and do stuff that you pull up and you go, oh, it's going to be fun.
Oh, look at this one.
Yeah. How did you get in there?
Yeah, that's when you're like,
Yeah. I've had a couple of those.
what? Yeah.
And we definitely will get to some stories. The one thing I want to point out in the book, the thing that I love is that you do touch on all different aspects, meaning you have they are chapters, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just a sitting there and boo-hoo, look at me, this is the shit I had to deal with.
No.
It's also, these are the good days, the days that I got to do this, the day we were talking about before we started here about the Christmas Eve tow.
Mhm.
Right, with the guy who, you know, and I don't want to spoil any of the stories, guys. You got to read them for yourselves and check them out. But, you know, the guy on Christmas Eve that was out with no insurance, just trying to get his daughter a gift that he just found out he was going to see her the day before, right? And cutting the guy a break. That happens more than we ever admit.
Oh yeah,
More than we ever admit. We never talk about it.
every single tow truck driver, bar none, cannot say that. Like nobody can say, I've never given anyone a break.
No, absolutely.
You know, and if there is someone out there, you're not fucking human. You might work in California.
That was a joke. I always had a joke that was about damage. It was the same thing, right? Every tow truck driver has broken something at one point. If they haven't, they're either full of shit or they haven't been doing it long enough.
Yep.
Because every tow operator out there that I know has broken something at one point. It's the same thing. Every tow operator has cut somebody some slack or given them a deal at one point. It's in our nature. I know we are painted, especially in recent news, we're painted as absolute monsters at times on the highway. You know, just like every department out there gets painted in their own way because of a few bad, it is the same thing in the towing industry, and everyone out there has cut a break at one point or another. Okay, Aidan, before we get too deep into the book, and we are going to get it or into our stories, because God knows we got stories for days. I want to do a quick thing we introduced last episode. It is called Plain Guy Trivia.
Okay.
I am going to ask you 5 questions. We are going to see how high you can score on the 5. It is not for $1 million. It is for bragging rights alone. Our current leaderboard, there's only one. It was 1 out of 5. We're hoping you can beat that today. Are you feeling confident? That is not the first question, but are you feeling confident?
Yes, 1 out of 4.
1 out of 4. It's 25% instead of 20. I'm winning. I don't want to answer the 5th one.
Yeah. We'll call it good. I'm winning.
All right. First one. They start off easy. Kind of. Name one of the 6 main characters from the popular TV show Friends. This is my wife's fault.
Rachel.
That's good. That's good for 1 point. All right. 1 out of 1. We're on. Do you want to quit now? Do you want to quit while you're ahead?
No, let's go for the gusto. I want to like at least beat the next person.
Okay, fair enough. So it's a little tougher, but it is car related. So, in what year did Volkswagen introduce the Golf GTI?
1988.
Close. 76. I didn't think it would have been that long ago. I thought it would have been.
Is that a Golf or is that a Rabbit?
It's the question I ran on randomtrivia.com said it was a Golf GTI.
Is it a Golf or is it a Rabbit?
It might be a Rabbit. It might be a Rabbit. We might have to go back and we might have to go back. You might win. Maybe the Golf was 80 something and the Rabbit was 76. You might have got that point. All right, number.
I'm old enough to remember that.
Well, that's why I kind of went for that question. As I was telling you, the first question was, what country did we sell the most iPhones in 2017 or something? I'm like, you ain't gonna know that. All right, what's the common household name for diluted acetic acid?
Orange juice?
No, vinegar.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense.
That's just spoiled wine, but
all right, so you ate it enough. You stopped at enough gas stations. You picked up enough snacks on the road. You a big fan of Twinkies?
yeah, not anymore.
Okay. There was a time you were, I hope.
Yeah. Well, it's Twinkies.
In what year was the Twinkie invented?
Ooh, I'm gonna say 1944.
Oh, not far off. 1930.
Oh,
The year ones are tough because it is literally just one right answer out of 2021 years. All right, last one. We're 1 for 4. What condiment, and I didn't know this one, what condiment was once sold as medicine? And I really want to know the backstory on this one.
mustard.
That's what somebody I ran the questions by at first said too, but it isn't correct. It was ketchup.
Really?
What was ketchup used for as a medicine though? Like what possible?
There's a lot of vinegar in it. It could be a blood thinner.
Tomato ketchup was once sold as medicine. In the 1830s, tomato ketchup was sold as a medicine claiming to cure ailments like diarrhea, indigestion, and jaundice. Fun fact.
It could cure jaundice because it gives you a lot of vitamin C.
I just figured it mellowed out the yellow with some red and made you look more pink.
Yeah, I don't know.
They just plastered it on and went, look, you're not yellow anymore.
I don't know. Tomatoes out and just give me the shit. So that wouldn't help.
I had no idea to that one. When I seen it, I was like, oh, it's an interesting question. There's only really there's like 5 condiments, popular condiments. So I figured there's one. Well, 1 in 5, Aidan. We are tied on the leaderboard. The good news is you tied for first.
Yeah.
You are currently tied for first. I didn't think the Friends one was going to be the one you would get. I thought the vinegar you had and the GTI I figured was legit. Jennifer Aniston. Yeah. That's why I asked you how much TV you watched.
Well,
and then you said you watched Netflix and Friends was on Netflix.
Remember, Jennifer Aniston is the same age as me.
Wow, you two took 2 very different paths.
So I grew up with it.
That's where you were going with that. That's not what I thought we were going. I lost track.
Yeah.
I went off the rails.
I'm just as good looking as she is. So
no, that's fair. I mean, your career has taken off just as much as hers. You know what?
Yeah, okay, I'm getting interviewed on the internet.
I know. When's the last time she sat down in an interview? Exactly. I haven't had her on my show yet.
I know. There you go. I'm doing
winning. We're winning. We're winning. Oh my God. My wife is a huge Friends fan, so she's gonna love the Jennifer Aniston talk constantly. She is. I mean, I think we have where they came off Netflix, they're on something else. We had to get the other thing so she could continuously watch it, although she's seen it 25 times.
Yeah. Has she seen the reunion?
Oh yes, she's seen the reunion.
Okay.
She didn't get to watch it live, I don't think. She was not live, it was pre-taped, but
2 of my daughters are big Friends.
Oh Jesus!
Fans.
Oh Jesus! Let's introduce them to my wife. It'll be great. It'll give me.
Well, they're about the same age, aren't they?
Yeah, well, my wife is 30. Yeah, yes, they're about the same age. Oh man! All right. So, getting back to the book, we were talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. Right. The one thing we talked about is that towing has an ugly side to it. All joking and laughing aside, and we can have a good time with this all we want. There is some stuff along the way that we get to see, whether we want to or not, that tends to stick with us and tends to affect us. Mental health is very important in the towing industry. I was just having a talk right before we sat down for this show with my neighbor who works on the fire department. And the one thing that we talked about is that, especially in the towing industry, we don't actually have an outlet.
No, none.
After a fatal clash, accident, fire, anything who EMS, fire, or police would attend, they have to sit down at one point and have somewhat of a debrief. Some of them are short, long, everything in between. We don't have that as tow operators. You mentioned that in your book, and I've been on that same exact experience. I have witnessed traumatic events and then went and did an unlock and a boost and a tow as if nothing ever happened, with no chance to truly get it out.
Yeah. And when you're showing up at a boost and you've still got someone else's blood on your clothes, it's kind of surreal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it kicks in. I don't think I can recall many recoveries that I did or fatalities that I did that it didn't kick in until later. Mm-hmm. Right? You just did a job and you got the job done, and then you're sitting at home, like you said earlier, one of the most dangerous things as a tow truck driver, alone with his thoughts. Mm-hmm. And you're just thinking about what happened that day, and you went, God, You know, like it's surreal. We laugh and we make jokes now and we can tell it as a story, but at the time and
It's
for months
lots of
after,
therapy.
I've never gone into therapy on it. I probably should. I've had a great support system around me once I reached out to that support system, which I think is its own form of therapy.
Yeah.
But you know, you and I were talking, and you do believe mental health and assessments and checks and ways for these guys to deal with it, whether they be new operators coming into the industry, because God knows we don't have enough of them as it is,
No.
or older operators who have just, you know, let it build up year after year after year and haven't dealt with it. What advice do you have for anyone after dealing with any sort of traumatic incident, whether it be a fatality, whether it be just a traumatic accident too? It doesn't even have to be a fatality. Just the, you know, sometimes the blood and guts is enough to send you off the deep end. What advice do you have for those operators that are facing that kind of stuff today?
Touch base. I mean, I think it's important for, you know, like the company owners and the dispatchers and all the drivers, you know, like it's been said that it's a brotherhood. You know, obviously there's women doing it too, so brotherhood, sisterhood, but it's, you got to watch each other's back. And it's no different for the police or for the fire or for the EMS or for the military. If you see one of your coworkers that is struggling, they're not themselves, you know, like they kind of got that 1,000-yard stare, they're far away, touch base with them, like pull them aside and say, dude, are you okay? What's going on? And what's very important is to actually listen. You know, like I get accused many times of giving unwanted advice or not listening because I'm sympathizing with something. But I think in this situation, it's very important to say, dude, I've been through this. I know what you're going through. I do understand. If you want to talk, I'm here, and just let them just talk about it. Because, you know, like it may be something completely out of the ordinary that's done it. You know, and it's not just necessarily one event, right? Like, I mean, you know, we've all been to fatals, you know, like I was showing you, I have a tattoo for my fatals, you know, a skull for every single one that I've been to. But the fatals weren't the only thing that affected me. It's the standing on the side of the fucking highway with people driving past you inches away at 140 kilometers an hour. You know, that drift as they check a text message and you're dead.
How many? I've been laying under a vehicle hooking up safety chains on the 401, and I hear a rumble strip, and I don't know what side it's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And
like you're living on that knife edge all the time. And that, like if you actually get into the psychology of PTSD and chronic PTSD, which is what I've suffered with, like there are different things. Like PTSD in itself would be, you know, like you and I go to a rave and somebody gets shot.
Right.
So we see a traumatic event, and that's one event. So, okay, we're never going to a rave again. You know, like fine.
I was good with not going to the first one. You made me go.
Yeah, I know, but that's just something like PTSD. But when you get into something like chronic PTSD, it's not one event. It's multiple events. It's constantly living in that state of high anxiety, of hypervigilance. And this is something that, you know, abused children, abused women, abused men, that's what they suffer from, right? Like when you get, you know, decades of abuse, you never know what's coming. You never know. So you live in that state all the time. Well, it's the same thing for first responders, right? Like
they never know what the next call is going to be, what they're going to see
happen. And even if you're at that call, you know, like one of the stats for police, and I actually had to deal with this just yesterday. Oddly enough, I'll give you a funny story on this, but the most likely time for a police officer to get killed It's at a traffic stop, right? Because they're doing it all the time, and they
Just
can get
odds
hit by
are
a
the
car,
numbers
they
are
can
yep.
get shot by the people inside it.
Mhm.
You know, like, I don't know if you've been down to the States and been pulled over, but they come hand on gun unlatched.
Yeah. Again, because of their experience down there and they're dealing with more guns out
Exactly.
there, more everything out there, right? Of course. Yeah.
You know, but I mean, especially in the big cities here in
Mhm.
Canada,
Mhm.
same thing.
Mhm. Yeah. You
Right?
see them,
We've got
you see,
gangs,
I
we've
don't want
got-
to call it more aggressive, but more prepared, more aware.
Exactly. So they never know what's going to happen. Now, I got pulled over yesterday with 3 other bikes. We were out for a ride. It was a beautiful day. You see what I look like. So I'm on a Harley, cruising down the highway, and we got pulled over, waved in. We were in a group of 30 cars, so we weren't going like faster than anyone else. but
Right.
He pulled us over.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And, you know, officer mid-30s, and he was vibing. Like, I could see, you know, he's there by himself on the side of the highway with 5 bikers.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, I ride for a very non-violent, nonprofit organization,
Right. But he doesn't know that.
but he doesn't know, you know, but he was so uptight that he handed out over $1,000 worth of tickets. And he was just being a dick. And that, and who knows where that's coming from,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because he's got high anxiety, because he's scared, because, you know, maybe he's come from a different detachment where he worked with gang enforcement. So
Right.
he doesn't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So that whole thing it's a cycle that keeps running through everything for everyone. And when you're living in that,
Mhm.
you don't actually recognize what you're doing to other people.
Yeah, you're so concerned on what you've got going on at that time and place and everything else. You're not looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Right. That's right. That's, you know, hopefully that some of those tickets will get dismissed.
Yeah, we're going for it.
Yeah, I imagine a couple of them will be. That's the one thing again, right? You know, over the years and stories in the book, there's always mention to a cop, Waldo. They call him Waldo in the book. And the one
is a conglomeration of about half a dozen officers that I've worked with over the years. Primarily, it is one that I worked with a lot, and there were a lot of shenanigans. He was at one of my weddings. You know, like we were friends. But having said that, we were friends that had absolutely no qualms about, you know, giving each other shit.
Yeah.
You know, and then some of the other ones were like some of the older cops that have been around for a while and, you know, knew how to deal with us idiots.
Well, that was the nice thing, right? Is we got the opportunity to deal with the cops quite a bit. And if you were on the cops' good side, you were golden. Right. And they would give you plenty of advice on situations. I had cops before where give me advice on a ticket that another cop gave me.
Yep.
Because they went, yeah, you know, we were business, you know, associates. We weren't, you know, actually that sounds really bad, especially with all the corruption going on in Ottawa. But you know, yeah, exactly, right. But no, there was a certain professionalism, you know what I mean, a professional friendship, and they would give you advice on things like that, and you got to find your way around tickets and different things. The shenanigans you guys, I forgot until I read it. Again, the oxyacetylene bomb. I have a video on another YouTube channel of mine. We did that. And I'm trying to think back to when we did. It would have been before I ever wrote. So it's before I ever read the book.
Mm-hmm.
But the only difference is we did it with a garbage bag.
Pop bottles are way better. They
garbage
contain the explosion and they make a louder bang.
Well, we did a garbage bag inside of a cardboard box, and we put a 6x6 block of wood on top of it, thinking the box will go out. It's only cardboard. That 6x6 flew. It flew. We have a video. It's on YouTube. There is a video on YouTube. I will go find it and I will post it on the PlainGuy channel for everyone to check out. But when you talk about the shenanigans and the blowing stuff up and the, the dumb stuff that you do not want to leave a bunch of tow operators around a yard bored, because they will find destruction. Airbags. Oh God, airbags. We would take airbags out of cars, hook them up to booster packs, and launch stuff up into the air. We'd see who could launch an airbag higher. We never launched people.
I saw a video just the other day of, I think it was a contest for one of the speed channel, velocity channel, whatever. They had everybody sitting on chairs mounted on top of airbags. And it was Russian roulette to see who went off first. And it would just launch them. It was hilarious.
Oh, yeah. We never did. I don't think we ever put a guy on a chair. We've launched them up into the air, but I don't think we ever put a guy, put them under a seat. We should have. I've seen the videos. Yeah. But it's potato guns. I mean, the dumb things that we used to do, and you'd find laying around the yard. It was, like I said, for anyone that is part of the industry, you will relate. For anyone that isn't part of the industry, you'll get a better idea of the good, the bad, the fun, the terrible, the everything that we have to deal with, right? Yeah. No, it was, you know what? I like I said, I bought it again. I reread it just for this show, and I was laughing reading it. I was sitting on my couch right an hour before we sat down, finishing up and reading stuff and chuckling, because again, I read the oxyacetylene and I went, oh my God, I remember doing that in an undisclosed company who I will not name's yard. And just relatable to giving the guy a deal. It's the book what you put together, you talk about it being raw, but I think that's what makes it so great, is that it's raw to a point that it's understandable. It's sharp. I mean, there's a fair share of F-bombs in it. We're not afraid to, you know what I mean? You called somebody a fucking idiot, I'm pretty sure, at one point.
Sure I have. I'm sure I have.
It's about as relatable as you can get for what it is. Now, this was set in a different time, right? Towing in the, you know what I mean? The late 80s
and 90s was very different than it is now.
Right.
Very different.
I can only go based off, hey, you guys said steel dolly bars. That's all I'm saying. It had to be different.
Yeah, we didn't have self-loading dollies. We had
assemble and then lift the car onto them.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah. I started on a sling only with manual dollies.
I've never ran manual dollies, but I can sling.
Yeah, that was not fun. But I mean, the other part of it too, I mean, it's still part of the industry, but not as much as it used to be back in the day. A lot of, when I first started and long before, it was either the local garage had a tow truck or two, and then it kind of grew into an actual towing business as compared to the garage that had the truck.
Right.
So, I mean, when you think about the types of people that became mechanics in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, these were returning GIs. These were, these were handy men. They were not your white collar crew.
Right. Right.
And those are the exact same people that became the 1%er motorcycle clubs.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Right. Yep. It was the exact same demographic that came back and
looking for something to fill that void. And
yeah, right. So I mean, they were handy. They were fixing stuff, and they weren't afraid to go out and try something new. They weren't afraid to go out and do something. Many of the guys when I first started were very hard living, right? I can remember stories of, and I've seen tow operators drunker than the people that they were towing. Right.
That's a different time.
Before I was here in Victoria, talking with some of the older crew that I worked with, it used to be that all the tow companies sat at the brass rail and drank until their calls came in.
Isn't that in Ottawa?
No, that's here in Victoria.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it was the same in Ottawa. It was the same in Toronto. It was, yeah, there's my Valley accent coming out. It's in Toronto.
Toronto.
But it was, you know, like it was a different time. Like you lived in your truck essentially. And, you know, if you wanted to have a beer, you had a beer.
Yeah.
Now that's just not the way it is.
No.
You know, thankfully.
No. Yeah, you know, it's got its goods and its bads, right? I think it, you know, in ways it's kind of made us soft in a way too, and good ways and bad ways, right?
Well,
my truck's parked out front. I'm not on call. I don't have anything going on. I'm not going out tonight, so you know, I had a beer. But absolutely, if I'm working, I'm on call. That doesn't fly anymore. That doesn't exist anymore.
But I think the difference is now you can have that. You can have that time off.
Right.
Whereas, you know, many years ago, there was no such thing as time off. It was you were on call 24/7. You know, and I did do that. I led that life, and I fucking hated it because, you know, I mean, I don't know how many times I got called away from Christmas dinner or birthday parties, or, you know, I think I got called away from a wedding at one point, and it was just like, okay, you know what? No, they can sit on the side of the highway for half an hour.
The first company I worked for, there was no time off.
Yeah.
It was, unless you were, well, we did heavy recovery as well as light duty towing and recovery, right? So if a tractor trailer rollover came in, and we're talking about the 401 highway, unless you're out of town, you better be there.
Yeah.
And I remember it was, we didn't say no. I don't know if we could or couldn't, you know, that's up for debate, but we didn't. And that took such a toll on you, because it's the same thing. It's, you know, Christmas Day, sitting there in my tow uniform and opening presents with some family, and then off to go do something and come back, and off to go do something and come back. And it would eventually just absolutely take a toll on you. And I think it's changing for the best in that sense now, right? I mean, it's giving operators more of a life.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more work-life balance, which certainly needed to happen. But unfortunately, you know, towing is kind of one of those, it's a feast or famine. Like you got to work when the work is available. You know, it's not like I have joked so many times over the last 25, 30 years. And I said, I would like to find the first guy that put 24 hours on the side of his tow truck and smack the fuck out of him. Car's broken down. It's not going anywhere.
I've seen companies, you ever hear that, where they run the 23.5 hour, and it's because of insurance purposes? Because if you're 24 hour, you fall on a higher premium.
Yep.
And so they're 23.5 hour.
Yeah.
But it is true. Who was the first one? Who,
you know, like, who knows, right? Like,
that was somebody in a big city. I got a genius idea.
Yeah, it's like, I'll go whenever. And you're like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, we had this good thing going.
You know, but I mean, if there's an accident, well, you got to clean it up. You got to deal with it. I mean, and especially now with the amount of traffic, like our infrastructure across the country sucks when it comes to, you know, the amount of cars on the road. So, you know, like there are people, I don't know what it's like in the TO area, but in Vancouver, there are companies that are paid to sit at the end of the bridge.
Not that I'm aware of. We're trying to get rid of those guys.
But they just sit there, and if somebody breaks down, boom, they hook them up and they take them to the end of the bridge, and that's it. And then they just get them off the bridge to keep the bridge rolling.
No, I don't know. I've never worked down directly in the heavy part of the city, so it's possible they have something like that. I could see that with the Burlington Skyway. There is some big, you know, areas like that. I know the government is currently, and I'm not fully up to date on the detail, but implementing a pilot project for exclusive towing zones on the 401, similar to how the province of Quebec runs. Meaning you break down, this is the company that is coming to get you. You call a number. This is where you are. You get that company, no choice. If they accept your roadside, great. If they don't accept your roadside, too bad. You know, you can submit the bill, but it's one company, one rate, one, you know, and avoiding all this AAA, AAB, AAC towing. And I'm not going to get into the politics on whether I agree or disagree with this, because at the same time, I believe in small business and small enterprise. But at the same time, you know, give an inch, take a mile, there's going to be repercussions for it. And I think we're starting to see that in Ontario.
It also comes down to safety and stuff too, right? Like I'm all for small business. I mean, shit, I run my own small business and I'm competing against some pretty big heavy hitters, but you got to do things safely. Like, you know, like we were talking and before we started, you know, I can remember seeing a 3/4 ton single axle truck trying to hook up a fucking semi truck. Like, dude, you're gonna kill someone. So if they're gonna go with an exclusive, you know, contracts, great, but you've got to have the equipment.
Well, that's where your heavy hitters are going to come in, and that's why I say your smaller business might suffer from it, right? There might be some legitimate small companies down in that area that do well off the 401, are honest, are legitimate, and there's no problems with. They're going to lose out, right? Because it's going to be the big hitting companies in Ontario. There's, you know, quite a few big ones in Toronto.
If, you know, if you're a legitimate small company that's doing well off that, well, then why can't you partner up?
Depending on what the contracts are like, I imagine there's possibilities.
I've got a dozen, you know, 450s, and I got 6 ramp trucks, but I have nobody qualified or no money to get into $1 million rotator.
Right.
But my neighbor has one, so we can have a partnership and say, well, I have access to this.
You really think though, like companies that are so close together, and I find, and you know, someone will prove me wrong somewhere, a lot of companies I find that are that close together to their competitor, like close enough that they could share resources like that, tend to want, like, there's a divide in the industry. We are so worried about letting out our company secrets, which, guys, there is no secret. We all do the same thing. We are so worried about letting out our company secrets that they absolutely, you know, disconnect from their neighbors, worried that they're going to steal their next job from them.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's like, guys, we all just tow cars or trucks.
Honestly, I look at it like I look at the Victoria, you know, scene here, and we have 2 tandems in the area, like right in the area, but we have a number of medium duties, and the tandems and the trailers are out all the time. The stuff from Up Island tandems come down because it's too busy, right? Like, you know, like so-and-so will call a tandem from 2 hours away to come and do a call because it's faster than waiting for the local guy.
Wow.
Because he's already got 6 calls lined
up.
up.
And that we start to see, I find we see that more in the small towns, right? Like we have a good working relationship with a lot of our neighbors, and that the small town is a whole different mentality. But once it comes to the city, now I have seen accidents and heavy wrecks where, and you know, you'll find them on the Discovery Channel, as you talked about on the show, where multi companies are working together. But a lot of it seems like the only reason those 2 companies are working together is because those are the 2 trucks that showed up.
Yeah.
Right. You the odd time you will see call in and friends. And I truly believe we talked about that brotherhood. There is supposed to be a brotherhood among the towing industry, right? We hear it dropped all the time. Because guys, at the end of the day, we're all doing the same job. But it's adhering to that brotherhood and helping each other out, and you know, stopping when there's another guy pulled over trying to load a car on the left, you know, on the right shoulder of the 401. Stop and add some extra lights until the crash truck or the cop can get there.
Yeah, like just sit there and block. You don't have to get out and help even. You don't even have to talk to each other. Just, you know.
Yeah, we've been, you know, and I don't want to sit here and just bash the industry. The industry, you know, I've met some amazing people throughout the industry, some amazing companies, you know, some of my best friends I've made have been, you know, because of bullshit like this, where we can just shoot the shit about towing. And, you know, you and I have never sat down and had a conversation today, and before today, and we could sit here and shoot shit about towing for hours on end.
Forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think, what it comes down to. And if we could all just get along that way, we would be doing amazing. But we can't. So, and I know there is a couple places that we talked about that you wanted to shout out, especially when it comes to dealing with the mental health that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to skip over it. I don't want to get too dark. I want to keep things kind of light, but at the same time, there is serious issues that need to be addressed, and there is serious places that can help anyone who may be watching this, who may not be sure if they're dealing with any sort of PTSD, anxiety, depression. Where can they go to find help? And you know, who has helped you along the way?
Well, in every single city, there is a victim services. And if they're at all worth their salt, they have resources. Victim services primarily are set up for victims of trauma, which is, you know, child abuse, domestic violence, criminal violence. But they also have all the resources for people that have witnessed it. And that is the first responders. So that's where I always say go first for wherever you are, whatever city, whatever town you are, go to your local victim services.
And we will put a couple of them in the description on the video, as well as above Aidan. You will see some up in the top banner.
Yeah. And I mean, I have to do a shout out to the Men's Trauma Center here in Victoria. They are fucking amazing. They are specifically designed for men that have been through trauma. And you know, I mean, like, trauma could be anything. I mean, like, with everything that's going on in Canada right now, there's a lot of mental health issues. There's a lot of stuff that's coming back out. Stuff that people have buried, and they're full. Right? Like, trying to get on that waiting list is incredible. And it's like that across the board. But they literally saved my life. I went to them 7, 8 years ago, I want to say. And they were referred to me by a victim services counselor that was referred to me by a police officer that was arresting me. Right? I was getting arrested for assault because I was off the wall, and and I was sober. Like, I hadn't been drinking for years at this point, but I was just so bent out of shape and off the wall that I tried to take a poke at him because he was in doing something or else. And I snapped. I went into that hypervigilant mode, and the fist just came straight up, and he just kind of looked at me and he's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Back off, just back off. You're in my space." And he looked at me, and he could see it in my face that I was not actually there. And he's like, "Have you ever been checked for PTSD?" And I'm like, "No."
Should I be?
And so, you know, that started the process of me going in. And I, you know, I had been trying to deal with mental health issues for many, many years because I knew something was wrong. I just had no idea what it was. Like, I'd been, what have I been tested? I've been tested for bipolar. I was tested for depression, anxiety. They tried to put me on all these different cocktails of drugs, none of which work because that's not what was wrong with me. So getting into the Men's Trauma Center, started doing, like, you know, you do talk therapy, which of course everybody does. And I mean, essentially that's what we're doing right here. We're talking about
Absolutely.
but then, you know, you also do stuff like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, something or other. I don't remember exactly what it is, but that works.
Yeah.
And there's a number of different ways to do it. Like, some people do it with auditory, some people do it with visual.
Okay. Just kind of, if I'm not mistaken, I thought I heard it's something to help kind of the brain rewire its paths on how it.
And they've been doing it for many years. Like, they've been doing it since the Vietnam War. That's kind of when it sort of started, and it's becoming more and more available, where as therapists are getting trained in it.
Right. Well, as there's becoming a bigger need as well, right? As we talked about with everything going on.
I don't know if it's necessarily a bigger need than there ever has been. I think it's
That's
just
fair.
more it's recognized.
Yeah.
And but yeah, no. So I mean, definitely, if anybody is questioning it, I mean, the symptoms are pretty minute. Like you don't really notice it until you start putting them all together. Like if you think, like if you're having suicidal thoughts, definitely go.
Absolutely.
If you're
Absolutely.
just irritable all
Mhm.
the time,
Mhm.
well, that's part of it.
Mhm.
Like you can say, well, it's just stress.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not just stress. If you're irritable all the time, you don't have fun doing the things you used to do.
Mhm.
If, like you don't want to hang out with your family, you don't want to hang out with your friends, there are some serious, serious issues going on that you really need to look at.
If you go from towing to creating shows on YouTube, you might want to get checked. But no, all laughing aside, it is true, right? We talked about this on one of my previous shows where, I had been diagnosed with anxiety and depression at one point, right? And I don't think it's ever, I say at one point, like it goes away. It doesn't
Yeah.
go away. You just learn different ways to manage it, and it comes and goes. I'm not sure if it's related to my time in towing, if it's just related to, but myself as a person who was, suck it up. It is what it is. You're just having a bad day. You'll get over it. Just, keep going. The day that I didn't believe anxiety, I talked to this before. I didn't believe anxiety was a real thing for till probably a couple years ago. I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
I thought it was an excuse to get out of things, right? And then the depression that came with it, well, that was just another excuse until you're faced with it, right? I had a wreck that stuck with me years ago, and I had nobody to talk to at the time, and I just let it fester. And I went down. I didn't go to the point of, we talked about suicidal thoughts. If anyone out there is having those, please get help immediately, and reach out to somebody. Mine had never got to that point, but I didn't know that there was anything wrong. Meaning I knew I was, kind of off and didn't want to deal with anybody, didn't really want to talk to anybody, didn't want to see anybody, wasn't getting the enjoyment, like you said, out of things that I previously would. But I didn't know what to call that. And I think there's a lot of people like me out there that just don't. You just go, I'm just off. I'm just having an off day. I'm having an off week. I'm having a, whatever it is. And to all those people, there might be something out there. And the day that I was able to tell the story of that accident, and just to get it out like you did in this book, just to get it out and say, this is what I went through, this is what I seen, this is what I was. I wasn't looking for any solution to the problem I was having, nothing. Just saying it out loud to another person, the weight that came off my chest because of that was unreal. So anyone that's facing
it makes it real.
It does.
That's the other part of it, is that it now makes it real. It's not just something floating around in your head.
By getting it out, whether it's writing it like you did, or whether it's talking to someone you trust. I've talked to new guys that we've trained along the way, and try and prepare them for that stuff after facing it. That's the good that we can do after facing it, and continue to face it. But you can reach out to other people and go, hey, like you said, I've been there. I'm not trying to tell you I've been in your exact situation, but I've been there.
Yeah.
And here's things that might help. Give them a try. If not, we'll find something else. We'll get you the help you need. But here's things that I found helped, and see if they work for you. So I'm very thankful that the Victoria, you said it, where was the Victoria?
It's the Men's Trauma Center.
The Men's Trauma Center in Victoria, BC. Well, I'm very happy that you got the help that you needed there. Because if not, we couldn't sit down here today. We couldn't talk about your book. We couldn't shoot the shit about towing and stories and what's wrong with the industry and what's right with the industry. I will ask you one last question, and it's not it's a tough question to answer. You've seen the industry. We've seen the industry face its struggles over the years. Negative publicity, a lot, is a big one now with the introduction of social media. What do you think is one thing that we can do as operators? I'm not asking what the industry needs to change, but what is one thing someone like myself can do as an operator to help the industry in the long run? It's a tough question.
Well, it's a tough question, but it's actually a very simple answer. It's understand that your customer doesn't want you there, right? Like, they're having a fucking shitty day. You are there because something went horribly wrong in their life. So you are not necessarily welcome. So have respect for them. Be nice to them. Even if they're a shithead. Right? Like if somebody's broken down on the side of the highway, their stress level is through the roof. You know, we're used to dancing in cones.
Yep.
They're not.
Yep.
You know, if they've had an accident, they don't know what the process is. This may be their first accident ever. They're in shock. You know, like they don't understand where the car is going. They don't understand what the process is. And I mean, fuck, if you're in a different province, the process is different.
That's true.
Right? Like if you're in a different city, the process could be different. So, you know, give them all the information. Don't just talk to them, like give them information. Give them a business card. This is where your car is going to be.
Call us if you have any
Right?
questions.
You have any questions, and you know, make sure the dispatch knows. Answer those questions. Be polite. Be respectful.
Mhm.
You know, like just look over at it, and it's a case of this shit is gonna just make their lives miserable. So
Try and make it a little better.
right, like just
I have a bad
that
habit.
will-
I have
you
a
know-
bad habit every time I pull up on scene. I ask somebody, "How you doing today?" You know, 'cause
Yeah.
it's just a comment. And then as soon as I ask it, you read the person, you go, "Bad crowd. Read the crowd.
You
Read
know,
the crowd."
I always kind of used to go, well, I can tell by the fact that I'm here, your day is not going as planned.
That's a good line. I might use that one.
You
I
know?
might use that one.
But-
I always, yeah, it's true. Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, so we're gonna make breakfast. We're gonna, do the daily crossword, and then we're gonna drive to work, get a flat tire, and call a tow truck.
Yeah.
That's nobody's plan is for us ever to be there. You know, the biggest thing the compliment I get at the same time is I hope I never see you again.
Yeah.
And
well,
sure, I don't blame you.
Yeah, it's like, well, I don't really want to see you again either. So get out.
All right, Aidan. Well, I've enjoyed it. Guys, if you haven't already, be sure to check out Aidan's book, Life in the Fast Lanes. I gotta keep murdering that one. Life in the Fast Lane, True Confessions of a Tow Truck Driver. I will post the links in the description for the video. You can find it at promontorypress.com, Coles, Chapters, Indigo's, Amazon. It's got some amazing reviews. I will personally give it 5 stars. I have read it twice, if not 3 times now. I know a couple people that have copies that I have given out. Guys, it is amazing what you have done, Aidan. I appreciate you so much taking the time tonight to sit down with me. And what can I say other than see you in the ditch?
I'll be there, brother.
All right, guys. I am PlainGuy. This is the PlainGuy Show. We will catch you on the next one. Thanks for coming. Take care.
You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down.